My name is Justin McBride, and I'm a program manager here at DrugFreeAZKids.org. At DrugFreeAZKids, we pride ourselves in bringing parents, caregivers, and those in the prevention world information and tools that they can use to help keep young people from falling down some of those rough roads of adolescence when it comes to substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, tobacco use. We do presentations in schools, churches, community groups, and various places all across the county, and even with different agencies across the state we go out to through our Community Alliance program. We have our one-time presentation as well as our active parenting workshops, which is a series of 6 workshops held over 6 weeks where we talk about communication, cooperation, instilling these qualities of character, responsibility, and how to raise a drug-free child with different prevention strategies and tips that you can use. So those are a couple of the programs that we offer. We also offer these webinars, typically about once a month, on a variety of topics from Molly to marijuana to juvenile delinquency, and bringing in other partners from teen law school, from Banner Poison Control. We bring in different people from time to time and talk about a variety of topics. So today, before we get started, I want to let you know a little bit about me so you know who this guy is that's joining you in your office or your home during your lunch hour. My name again, Justin McBride. I'm a program manager here at DrugFreeAZKids.org. And what that means is I get to go out and deliver some of those programs that I just talked to you about. Our one-time presentations, our active parenting workshops, webinars. I also get to write different blogs and work on our website and do a little bit of everything here at the organization, which I really enjoy doing. So a little bit about my background. I am an Arizona native, born and raised, and graduated from South Mountain High School. I spent a little while in the Marine Corps before eventually making my way back to Arizona and then to California, where I was involved with Students Against Destructive Decisions. I also consulted with ONDCP, the Office of National Drug Control Policy, on some youth programs, as well as the Boys and Girls Club, where I worked directly with youth as a branch director over there. And prevention is really important to me because I can see the potential that are in young people, and drugs and alcohol can be a really big speed bump along the way to reaching that potential. So I really find it important to talk about prevention, especially relating to substance abuse, as much as I can. Fun fact, actually, my passion for prevention goes back to high school, where I was a youth member of SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions, at a SAD chapter and on the state level and national level in high school. So prevention is kind of in my blood at this point. It's just what I do, and I'm happy to be able to bring that to you guys today. So here's what we're really here for today, right? Molly. Who is Molly? Who the heck is this Molly? Some of you may know a little bit about her, what she is, what it is, and some may not, and that's okay. So we'll break it down and back to its roots. And throughout the presentation, if you have questions, please put those in the chat box. I'll do my best to get to them. If I can't get to them right away, I will eventually get to them at the end, but please ask questions along the way. I really do appreciate your input as well. Also be sharing a couple little videos and PSAs throughout the program that I've come across that I think are great and that you might be able to use with young people you know, or with other professionals in your field, or just sharing with adults. So before we move on to where Molly's at and what we can do about it, who is Molly? Well, who is she? Plain and simple, 3,4-methylenedioxymethamphetamine. Yes, that's a mouthful, and yes, it took me some practice to get that down. I'm not going to test you guys at the end to make sure you got it, but methylene dioxymethamphetamine, also known as MDMA. MDMA is what you may have heard of as a club drug or the love drug, and you hear it in dance scenes, the dance scene in different places, but essentially MDMA. That's what Molly comes back to. Molly's, at its root, is MDMA. So to know a little bit about Molly, let's look at a brief history of MDMA and how it came to be here in the U.S. and even in the world. So in the early 1900s, MDMA was first developed in Germany, and it was to be used in synthesizing other medications, other pharmaceuticals that were out there. It didn't really have a ton of standalone uses. They messed around with it a little bit, but it really didn't pick up and to any degree really until the 1970s, when there were some U.S. scientists who thought that they could start researching its use and thought it'd be a great idea to try it out with psychotherapy. And so they started testing things out. However, they never got FDA approval. They never even had formal clinical trials. They just thought, hey, we think this is a great idea. Let's try it out. Which I'm all for new ideas and testing out different ways, but probably not the best way to go about it. So it really wasn't mainstream at that point, and they knew that if it became mainstream in its research, that it would likely get banned quickly, and it would hinder their ability to research. So they really didn't keep it, they really kept it on the down low, and they didn't let a lot of people know about it. And it's not really until the 1980s that MDMA starts to gain popularity more recreationally. Because in the 70s, it became a little bit more recreationally used, I guess you could say, by some of those in the psychotherapy field, or different psychologists who tried it and were using it for different reasons. And from there, it became not just for research purposes, but for some of them for pleasure too. So in the 1980s is really when we see it hit the U.S. Nightclub scene. That's really where it got its start at, recreationally speaking. And that was under the name Ecstasy, which I'm sure you're all a little bit more familiar with that term, ecstasy. Well, at the end of the day, ecstasy and Molly are pretty similar. Ecstasy was known to be cut with other drugs. It was never, there was never a claim that it was a pure form of MDMA. It was known to be cut with other drugs. In 1985, the FDA actually made it illegal, placing it on a list of Schedule I drugs. So it wasn't until 1985 that it was actually placed on the list of Schedule I drugs. And a quick fact on that, it was the first drug that the FDA used their emergency powers to make it illegal, I guess you could say, and that was granted to them by Congress. And that was really important because it was getting really out of hand within the nightclub scene, and as far as those who were researching it without any type of approval. So the FDA being able to use that emergency power to place it on the list of Schedule I drugs, making it illegal, really helped. It later was placed permanently on that list of Schedule I drugs. Later on into the later part of the 80s and the 90s, we see a rise and fall, that kind of back and forth in different groups and different populations of ecstasy, or different variants of MDMA. But not a lot really changed as far as the drug was concerned up until about the 2000s. In the 2000s, ecstasy, as it was really called, had gotten kind of a bad rap, and rightfully so. It rightfully got a bad rap, being mixed with some crazy stuff and having unintended side effects that people really weren't sure of. So that's where Molly starts to enter the scenes in the later part of the 2000s, early 2000 teens, I guess you could call it. And that's where MDMA, under the name Molly, enters the scene. And under the premise that it's safer than its predecessors, and because it's a pure form of MDMA. That was the initial claim, that Molly was the pure form of MDMA. It doesn't have all this other stuff mixed in with it that you don't know how it's going to impact you, what it's going to do to you. But that was the claim. Well, quickly we know that, as with most drugs, from the point of production to the retail market or the end user of the drug, a lot of changes happen. It gets cut with other drugs and different substances, as was the case with Molly. Not to say that a pure form of MDMA is safe by any means. Pure form of MDMA is still a harmful substance. And in just a second, we'll talk a little bit more about what it does to the brain and to the body. Well, pop culture, especially in the teens, probably in the past 5 years, has really been prevalent in different types of music and pop culture. On the bottom left there, you see a clip from Miley Cyrus's video, and we talked about this in my previous webinar, Pop Culture and Drugs, and she has a line, dancing with Molly, doing whatever we want, poking fun at the term Molly. You also see Madonna, so a very spanning different generations even. And this was a couple years ago when she was in front of a crowd at an EDM, electronic dance music festival, and she got up on stage and she says, "How many people in this crowd have seen Molly?" Poking fun again at the drug Molly. Look, and if you look closely at her shirt, depending on the size of your screen, you can make out it says MDMA. That was the name of her album. It was poking fun at MDMA and making it not really a serious drug, just, oh, it's a club drug, it's something we do to have fun, and kind of just mixing her name Madonna and MDMA together. And so pop culture has definitely embraced the term Molly, as has society in general. And this was the plan of a lot of manufacturers of MDMA, pushing it as Molly. Molly sounds like a friendly person. That's the girl next door, maybe your friend. It's not really that scary of a name. It's a lot more inviting than methylene dioxymethamphetamine or MDMA or Ecstasy that didn't have a good name for itself at that point. So Molly was really meant to make what was really meant to be a change in marketing of the drug, and it was an effective one, unfortunately, that made more people susceptible to the dangers, not realizing really what MDMA is or what else is in the drug other than MDMA. So at the end of the day, what is Molly? Molly, MDMA, Ecstasy, Adam X, love drug, you name it. There's various street names or slang for the drug. They're all pretty similar. How is Molly or MDMA ingested? Typically through oral means. Some people can snort it, have snorted it and used it in different ways. But most people who use the drug are going to consume it orally. It can come in different forms depending on how you get it. On the top left, you see some of the capsule forms where it has the pure form of the powder that's mixed in. It looks kind of medical there. It looks like something you might get from your doctor. And that's kind of the plan too. Like, okay, it's a powder form, so it must be the pure form. Not the case. We'll see that here in just a second too, what it's actually mixed with sometimes. You can see it's kind of a crystalline powder. It can be in different forms. It can be a finer powder, a little bit more crystal-like, depending on how fine they actually crush it up. That's where you see the powder there and some of the larger crystals. On the bottom left, you see some of the tablets that can be pressed into all sorts of fun shapes like stars and smiley faces, peace signs, Playboy bunnies, Nike symbols, Chevrolet, you name it. Any symbol you can probably imagine has been pressed into an Ecstasy tablet at one time or another. So, and then you see somebody taking it orally on their tongue right there. Now, some people think that the different designs on the pill may mean it's a different variation. Maybe the smiley face is stronger, or this is weaker. It includes a different kind of additive. It's not really the case. They do vary, definitely, what's in them, but you could have two pills that look exactly the same, that the chemical makeup is very different. So you can't just look at it, and it's not like the packaging of Lay's potato chips where you see a certain image and you know that, oh, it's going to be this flavor or that flavor, and you know what the nutrition facts are. With most Molly and Ecstasy, it varies greatly. So what does Molly do? Rather than me just sit up here and give you all the great information that I have, I found a great video that explains the effects of MDMA on the brain. It's a short video, and I'm going to share that with you guys. What Molly actually does, or MDMA does to the brain and to the body.
With an estimated 2 million pills being smuggled into the US every day, and 1/3 of students at universities like Stanford saying they've tried it, MDMA, or Molly, has become a popular drug of choice. But what exactly is it, and how does it affect your body? Scientifically known as 3,4-methylene dioxy and methamphetamine, MDMA is usually taken in pill form and supposed to be composed of the pure chemical. Ecstasy, on the other hand, is the term for MDMA, which has been chemically altered with other additives like amphetamine or caffeine. In its pure form, MDMA affects the neurotransmitters in your brain. Neurotransmitters are chemicals in your body which relay messages while also controlling things such as reflexes, emotion, and memory. In particular, the neurotransmitter called serotonin controls appetite, sleep, memory, learning, and in this case, mood. When something really great happens in your life, say you fall in love, there's an increase in the release of serotonin from nerve cells, which ultimately stimulates your body and makes you feel happy. And it just so happens that when you take effective amounts of MDMA, these same cells are triggered to release enormous amounts of serotonin, along with other neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which trigger even more electrochemical firing in the brain. This change creates the intense experience of happiness, feeling social, increased empathy, and the inability to sleep, which is likely why it's such a popular party drug. These feelings generally last around 3 to 8 hours as your brain cells naturally work to reuptake the serotonin and have it chemically destroyed. But because MDMA releases so much serotonin, your body also destroys more than usual. This means when your brain function is back in its normal state, there is less serotonin available to bind to your receptors and make you feel good with normal events. This can also lead to a fairly severe hangover with side effects such as negative mood, spouts of depression, irritability, and feeling extra tired. Despite the negative effects, MDMA is being studied as a potential therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety. PTSD patients generally have a decrease in brain communication between the amygdala and the hippocampus, but MRI analysis has shown that MDMA actually increases the communication in these regions. However, this treatment remains fairly controversial as studies on rats and monkeys have shown that even small amounts of MDMA can not only destroy the endings of brain cells involved in the release of serotonin, but potentially cause permanent brain damage.
So now we have a little bit better idea, and hopefully that video did a good job at explaining what it does to the brain. That is, let me make sure I give credit to them. That is ASAP Science, ASAP Science, and they have some other amazing videos on different substances and different topics that aren't so PG-13, I guess you could say, on YouTube. I do recommend checking them out. When you get a chance, if you're interested in this video. I'll also be sending out a list of resources and links to all the videos and content that I've used here. So don't worry that you have to write it all down right now. So now you have a better idea what's going on. Crazy stuff is happening inside the brain. Serotonin, messing with serotonin is really dangerous because that, I mean, as the video shows, it can lead to things like depression and anxiety, and it's really hard for the body to manage serotonin without any chemicals. That's why depression and anxiety are so prevalent in our society, because serotonin is something that's hard for our body to manage. And with all the different chemicals and foods and things that we're eating, now you throw something like MDMA into the mix, and it's really going to make it tough for someone, especially a young person, to manage that. And we have more information on our website about the development of a young person's brain and why it can be really harmful to mess with things like serotonin. So check out our website for more information on the developing brain, and it'll show even more about the brain. So quick recap, there's an impact on the health that's both short and long term when using MDMA. And it's important that young people understand this as well, because people think, oh, it's pure form, right? It's Molly, it's the pure form of MDMA. Well, even if it's the pure form of MDMA, look at all the negative effects that it can have on one's health. And those that impact on one's health and mood can also lead to an impact on education and learning, social interactions that a young person may have. Very dangerous. Then on top of that, you bring along Molly's friend, bath salts. Well, even though Molly's initial claim that it was pure MDMA, that was its initial claim, we know that's not true because, like I mentioned before, from point of production to the end user, the retail sale of the drug, I guess you could say, most drugs get cut with something else. And Molly is no different. In fact, almost all Molly that's out there is cut with something else, and oftentimes that's bath salts. If you don't know about bath salts, they have similar effects to Molly, some greater, and some even greater. It's much more unpredictable. The drug it's a synthetic drug. It's not like the bath salts you're thinking that you put in your bathtub when you want to relax at the end of the day. Not those type of bath salts. They're sold under the name bath salts, or at least they used to be. They're now illegal. However, just because they're illegal doesn't mean that all the places that were manufacturing it just throw away all that product, especially overseas. In fact, it lowered the price of bath salts dramatically, meaning it's cheaper than pure MDMA, and cutting it with MDMA can save somebody quite a lot of money if they're a drug dealer, either a middleman or even the final, I guess, street dealer, you could say, couldn't even cut it themselves. So who knows how many times it can get cut before it actually makes it to the end user. On top of those negative effects that MDMA has, we have all the scary effects that come along with bath salts. And if you want more info on bath salts or synthetic drugs, we can't get into too much of that now just for time's sake. You can check out our previous webinar. The presentation is archived and it has links to different info on synthetic drugs other than just bath salts. So check out DrugFreeAZKids.org/webinars and you can download a PDF of that presentation if you want more info on bath salts. So we know that it's mixed. And so it's mixed. And how is it mixed? What does it look like? Well, here's another, this video shows, it takes kind of a comedic look at it. This is a PSA from Toronto Crime Stoppers, and it's called Cooking with Molly. And it shows really at the end of the day what's happening before drugs make it to the end user.
If you haven't already...
Oops, that's the end of our other video.
Welcome to Cooking with Molly. Today's secret ingredient is meth. Okay, let's get cooking. First up, pure MDMA. I made this ahead of time. It comes out in crystal form, so we're just going to grind it up a little bit. You almost never see this stuff anymore. Why? Because it's kind of boring. I like to add a little heat to it, keep things interesting. That's where these come in, bath salts. Would someone shut that dog up? Now, you can measure it out into the bowl, but I just like to eyeball it. A little pinch should do. Don't want you to burn down an entire city block. And that brings us to the star of today's show, methamphetamine. Don't spill it. A little bit of color. This is my signature blue. Some binder. Now, when you've got all that in there, you give it a good mix. Then we bring out our presser, and we start pressing pills. And... voila. Join me next week when we'll be cooking Molly with... what are we cooking with?
Heroin.
Awesome. We'll be cooking Molly with heroin. Join us, won't you?
So that video, I think, does a great job at demonstrating how drugs get cut. And like I said, we know what MDMA can do to the body. So when you mix that in with other substances that you don't even know what's in it and how much of it is, it's so dangerous. And most young people don't realize that. Most young people think, oh, it's the pure form of the drug. It's great. Well, one, we need to teach them what actually MDMA does to the body. And then two, what they're actually taking. Because when it comes to talking to a young person, you almost have to sell them on an idea. And for those of you that work with teens, you know this. It's not just presenting the information, it's really selling them on the idea of it. And they already know how harmful things like bath salts are. A lot of times they know, they've seen the videos and the zombies and stuff like that that people have called them. And you look at heroin and meth, and it can seem like a really scary concept, and it is. So if we can do a good job at explaining that you don't really know what you're getting when you get Molly, that can really help out. Because, well, just saying this is Molly in its pure form and look how bad it is for you, on top of these other things, it may not be enough. So we really need to do a good job at educating ourselves and young people. And we'll get to that in a bit about what we do. So where is she? Where's Molly at, and why do we care? Well, Molly is found in concerts and parties and festivals on campuses. You're really going to find Molly where young people congregate, where they get together. You saw how Molly affects the serotonin in someone's brain and pleasure and think about how young people are forming relationships. And at all these places, concerts, parties, festivals, school, those are where a lot of pleasant experiences are happening, and they're making new friends, and they're forming great bonds. And Molly can exaggerate that. And think of how good it feels to be accepted, especially as a young person. Most young people want very much to be accepted by their peers. And if you can exaggerate that feeling and you can emphasize that, that's where this drug comes in. And that's why it's really dangerous, because to get that same feeling, you have to end up using more and more of the drug. And you can see how that messes with the serotonin levels, and it's harder for the body to create serotonin and to regulate it, because the body releases all this serotonin, but then the body has to come back and absorb or destroy all that serotonin because there's too much, but it normally kills off more than it originally produced, that like we saw in the video. So I think that video that we saw earlier is even something you can show to young people that are mature enough to understand the concepts to really see what's happening. So now we can kind of see where Molly is. These are not the only places that you'll find Molly, but this is definitely where Molly is going to be more prevalent. So why do we care? Well, because kids are using. This isn't just a college problem. This isn't just an adult problem. We know that in high school and even as early as middle school, kids start experimenting with MDMA, ecstasy, Molly. Arizona, we're slightly above the average as far as lifetime use of MDMA, except for 10th grade, when the U.S. average is a little higher. Probably means that the U.S. average is just a little earlier that kids are using, maybe a year earlier, versus 11th and 12th grade, where we surpass the U.S. average again of lifetime MDMA use. So it varies a little. We're slightly above the average on a whole across all grades. So it's scary. That, if you can't tell, that's just about 7.5% of high school seniors say that they've used Molly. So this isn't just a small problem. 7.5%, that's a lot of people. If you look at a group of 100 kids, I mean, you're talking about 7 to 8 kids in that group, and depending on where they are and the groups that they hang out with, they're going to be more vulnerable to abusing MDMA. We also know that MDMA users are polydrug users. This means they're using more than just MDMA. Molly, ecstasy, whatever you want to name it, they're using more than a variant of MDMA. 9 out of 10, 92% of MDMA users report being a polydrug user. And that's things like heroin, things like cocaine a lot of times, LSD, it could be heroin, maybe ketamine, and various other drugs. So it doesn't just stop at Molly. There's other drugs that are being used as well. So now we know a little bit about Molly. Hopefully you were caring about it before we saw these last couple of slides, but just a selling point for you or those that maybe if you're a social worker and working with your clients or parents or whoever it may be, I just want to give you some information that you can really arm yourself with to share the seriousness of this drug. Well, what do we do? Well, it starts off with clearly communicating expectations, and we always come back to these points at the end of our webinars because it's important to remember this. When it comes to different drugs and substances and youth abuse, we can use some of the same tools at combating them. We need to clearly communicate expectations. That means talking about the seriousness of the drug, making sure our kids know what's out there and what our expectations of drug use are. Having family contracts is something that works for a ton of families, whether it's in writing or a verbal agreement. Make sure that youth understand what the consequences, whether natural consequences of using the drug are, or what the consequences of drug use in the home are going to be. Also, help build resilience by giving them the tools, giving yourself the tools to talk about it, to know what is Molly, what the drugs are. It's really important that we talk with our kids and listen to our kids because they have questions and they may have information that we may not be aware of, and communicate. It's having a dialogue. It's definitely a back and forth, and having a family plan in place. Do you have resources for drafting a family contract? Yes, we do. What I can do is when I send out a list of the resources and the recording of this webinar, I will make sure to include a link to family contracts, because that is something that works for a lot of families. Also, a question about drug testing. Not all drug tests are going to detect this drug. It depends on the drug test that you use. That's why here at DrugFreeAZKids.org, we always recommend, if you do suspect that your child is using drugs, one, arm yourself with the information before you just approach them. Make sure you know what you're talking about. On our website, you can actually find information about what to do if you think your kid may be using drugs. And if it does get to the point where you think a drug test is needed, definitely seeking professional help. Somebody that can test for different variants of the drug, and somebody who will be able to help you if it does come back positive. And then that way it can be you and your child working together to solve that problem versus you being the one that's drug testing. Sometimes that can be, it can kind of put them on the defensive and it becomes you against them. So professional drug testing is always a way to make sure that you're testing for everything. And that you'll have the resources that you need at the end of the day, because most can put you in contact with different services after that. So building resilience is definitely key. One way you can do that, giving them information. Their National Institute on Drug Abuse, it's called NIDA. NIDA for Teens is fantastic. You can go on their website, and it has different information on Molly, MDMA, ecstasy, heroin, meth, marijuana, you name it. If it's a drug that's out there, it's going to give teens information that they need. And it's geared towards teens in a teen-friendly format. So if you're not always the best at sharing information, use that. Talk to your teens about that. There's also a PSA that I'm going to put up real quick, and then we'll come back. We'll wrap it up with some questions. But this is a PSA that has come out that you might be able to use with your teens, or people that you know that are in the dance scene or into club music, and where it's easy to fall into drugs like Molly and that kind of a scene. This is a great PSA that came out from the Electric Zoo, which is a music festival, and how they are addressing that the substance.
Hey! What's up? You look great!
Hey, it's gonna be a great night!
Yeah, how sick is this show?
Oh my god, the DJ's insane!
Yeah, I'm sweating. It's gonna be dope. You trying to roll? You wanna roll?
Nah, I'm good! Do you know what's in that stuff?
It's all the same. You looking up, lady?
Yeah, great!
Deal, shake on it.
Oh, you're really starting to feel it, huh?
Oh, dude, yeah, it's like these lights are insane. These beats are sick. It's like, I'm so stoked to be here right now. I mean, dude, I'm so stoked to be here right now. Hell yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm vibing. You and me. You and me.
Put me down!
Totally cool. Totally cool.
Oh, yo, dude, you're scaring me. You want to take a drink of water? You're tripping out right now.
You have beautiful hair. Like I want to touch it and then like wrap it around my face like golden waterfalls. Oh, these beats. I'm vibing. Are you vibing? No, let's keep dancing. Okay? Oh, you are so beautiful. Like sunshine in your eyes. Like you deserve so much happiness. And the lights go into your insides. Like,
Dude, you're acting really weird. You want me to go find your friend?
no, I've got the energy. I'm perked up. It's all going. It's not all baby. I'm killing it. It's hot. Whoa, it's so hot. It's hot. It's like I need a pool. Like, oh my god, how does that sound? I got like a pool. Like I'm gonna vibe with all these people right now. Like these people are all over the right now. So many people. So many people. Too many.
So that was Come to Life, a PSA by the Electric Zoo festival they used a couple years ago. So there's a lot out there, because the dance music and electronic dance music, as they become mainstream, are really trying to change their image, and they don't want to be all about drugs, and they don't want to be associated with that. So there's a ton of PSAs by very famous electronic dance music, pop music people about MDMA, about Molly. Check those out. I will put some of them in the list of resources and links when I send that all out to you guys in the next couple days. Also, you can find more information on our website about various drugs, aside from just MDMA and Molly, and different strategies that you can use with maybe the parents that you work with your kids, pretty much anybody that cares about young people. DrugFreeAZKids.org is the website. Please check that out. There's a ton of resources on there on a variety of topics. Also, I'm going to put over, I'll send out a link to our Facebook, so you can like us on Facebook, because that's where we post all of our blogs and information about upcoming events and webinars. And I recommend you liking us and following us on Facebook and Twitter so you can know what's out there and know what's going on. It's the easiest way to stay informed. Right now, I will take questions, but while we take questions, I'm going to ask you to fill out this brief survey. We are funded by the Arizona Parents Commission on drug abuse and prevention. Sorry, I think I mixed that up a little bit. But the Arizona Parents Commission, they provide us funding for many of the programs that we do, and this allows us to report back to them on what's effective, and it allows us to improve the programs that we offer and bring webinars to you that are relevant and you find important and valuable. So what I'd like to do right now is, while everybody's filling that out, and a reminder, once everybody fills that out, I'll go back, and from the surveys, it doesn't, I won't necessarily look at your individual survey results as it links to your email, but I will know the emails of those people that did submit the survey, and I'll send everybody out that submits the survey a copy of the resources and a link to the recording of the webinar so you can use that for yourself. Does anybody have any questions about MDMA, about Molly, about talking to kids about substance abuse? I'm happy to stay on as long as I need to. I know we went about 5 minutes over. I look to typically go until about 12:30. Sometimes I sneak by at 35 minutes. But I will stay on as long as I need to for those of you that have questions. So if you have questions, just put those in the chat box. If not, if you can't think of them right now, you can always come back and email me those questions that you have later. Like I said, I will send out a link of all the resources and things that we went over today, because there's some great content that's out there. I do my best to gather all this content that is just fantastic. Fantastic platform to share all that in a really quick bit, because I know not everybody has 3 hours to sit on a webinar and listen in every day. So I appreciate everybody for joining. I'll give you a few more minutes to type in on the survey, and I'll give you guys about 1 more minute, and then I'll put my info up on the screen. Again, my name is Justin McBride. My email, justin.mcbride@drugfreeazkids.org. You'll get my email in the follow-up email to this anyways. Check out our upcoming webinars at drugfreeazkids.org/webinars. You'll find out about all of our webinars that we have in the next few months. And when I send you the resources from this webinar, I'm also going to include our upcoming webinar that you'll be able to sign up for through a link on that as well. All right, it looks like we're just about wrapped up with the survey. And I want to bring you back to my information. That's my email, my phone number. If you're interested in bringing any of our programs to your area, please contact me. Most of what we do now for our active parenting workshops and our one-time presentations are here in Maricopa County. If you are a Community Alliance partner program member and you're interested in getting any more information or us coming out to provide any of this, let me know and I'll see what we can do. Looks like we don't have any more questions, so thank you guys so much for joining in. I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, and you guys have a safe and enjoyable day.